okay. I'm out in the field and I want to check and see if I can do a live out here just for some like questions and answers and things like that. I have my tablet out here as well because I want to try and see, responses and talk accordingly with that. But the reason for I want to do this one is because just recently I did the video with Dequitum with the armor and the knights. I want to talk a little bit more about that, kind of what we did, how we go ahead and made that safe and did that. I'm going to grab a couple examples here. So when we did that test, that was the one, I mean, I'm sure you saw the video if you didn't check it out on his channel or on my channel, because that was definitely a exercise in bravado and bravery. And so when we did that testing with him, he had his armor on. Now his armor, if I'm not mistaken, is made out of titanium, which is lighter, but he did say he feels impacts more. So it's not as good as hardened steel, just substantially lighter. And so he was definitely the most apprehensive about that. So he went ahead and forged these here. So if you didn't see it, then this is what we were using on his armor. You can see that the metal, this is hardened steel, you can see it bent in right there. So those strikes, even the ones that were, even just hit the spots where he was absorbing it well, you still had that big impact from when that hit. And so when those struck, it was really interesting because he really, if it's anywhere where the armor is thicker around like the center mass, there wasn't a lot. Now, as opposed to the bodkins, which we didn't use, that would be something that would be much more dangerous, obviously, as I did 2 shots. One hit him here, and the second one went right in between the gapping right there. So if it was an arrow like this, that would have been a really big problem. But because we were using these, the goal was not necessarily a penetration test, obviously. It was much more about what would happen if you get that, because in a lot of the armor tests that I've done, and even like in Todd's workshops, which are much more extensive, there's a lot of comments and people who basically will say, it's gonna knock you out, right? If you do that, you're gonna get, if it hits your head, you're gonna go unconscious, it'll jar you. And so that was the main thing we wanted to test, is because unlike standard modern arrows, which are like, 400, 500 grains, these are about 15, 1600, 1700 grains. So it's like 4.5 ounces, I guess you could say. Modern arrows are about like 1 to 1.5 ounces. These are closer to 4.5. So it's a lot of mass moving towards you very quickly as well. So those are the things we really want to try and decipher, was how much of a jarring impact would you have and would it throw you off? The only thing that really got him, if you saw the video, was the one that hit him on his gauntlet and on his hand. And so he was holding the sword down here, and so that hit the hand, and so that caused his hand to go numb. He felt like it popped his finger out a little bit, and then it went back in. It broke the gauntlet in a couple places. So that's definitely something, especially the ones in the kept tanking and kept moving. So this is definitely what we had in mind when we wanted to try and keep it safe. But as the testing continued and as he started to feel more impact, a big thing he was saying was, man, I wish I would have made him less bulbous, I guess you could say. And sorry, I'm doing this in the back field, and so I don't know, the internet and everything's usually pretty spotty out here. So if it comes across a little blurry, then that's just the way it is. I want to try this because I've never done one outside and see if I could get any good reception here. But if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work, and I'll just do it inside the house or in the garage or something. But I want to try something just a little bit different there. And so, as with all these things, this is very much a dialogue for me. If you guys have questions about anything as we're continuing, feel free to shoot them in the messages and let me know, because I'm happy to respond to that way. Just makes it easier, a little more engaging, a little more fun, so I don't have to talk to myself the whole time. The other thing I wanted to talk about too was I've had quite a few people ask about the Lars Anderson Viking or Norse, the Scandinavian archery. Let's see. A little in and out, but yeah, okay. So it's probably at my end if it's choppy for a bit, because like I said, I'm out in the field, so I'm away from the house and I'm using the internet out here, not Wi-Fi. So I think that unfortunately, we'll see how long I stay out here, if it's even worth it, because the camera quality looks like it's not doing a great job, but we'll try our best. But I've had a lot of people ask as well about the Scandinavian or Viking archery video that Lars Anderson did as well, where it's like a stomach draw, right? And I've seen a few videos on it. Other people have given their take on it and their interpretation of it and everything. And they were like, can you do a video about that? What are your thoughts on it and everything? And so I want to talk about it in a live video, just because I didn't think necessarily that it was worth it to fully dive into it for a full video. For, you know, Lars Anderson's part, you know, he's an incredibly skilled archer, of course, but I think that there's a lot of people who are looking for, you know, a reinvent the wheel type of video, where you kind of take something that is not really a major idea or one or two drawings, show it in a specific way, and you run with it to kind of be contrarian or get more views or anything along that nature. So if you guys haven't seen it, check it out so you know exactly what I'm talking about. But his argument is that Viking or Scandinavian archery was fast, and it was drawn to the stomach draw, because some of the paintings show it. So some of the paintings show it where it's kind of in this way, and they kind of have it right in here. And so just for frame of reference, this is the 130-pound bow. So this is one of the lighter ones that I do have. And so it's not necessarily good because he was using lighter ones. And even in the video, he referenced, you know, later on, you know, you had to change it to the Mediterranean draw or a higher draw, chest draw, when you get heavier draw weights. But I really feel like, and I've actually talked to Dequitum about this as well, is that you can't necessarily take the artistry that's two-dimensional drawing as face value, because when they did swords in that drawing, it would always show it with the pointy, where is that sword? I think may have forgot it. But either way, so as opposed to holding it in this way here, where it would just look like a straight line, they would always have it turned to the side here. And so you could actually see it there, but it's not necessarily completely indicative of the style or of the actual technique that was used, because Dequitum, if you don't know, he's an art history major, so he studies a lot, he paints a lot, and there's limitations when it comes to that type of painting, and so, or that type of drawing where it's two-dimensional. And so you can't necessarily trust the sword forms for technique, because it's done in a way that the person who's viewing it can understand what's going on. So the swords, as opposed to being held in a specific way, were always towards, let's say, the viewer, right? So it was always held this way. So whatever technique that was used didn't necessarily translate into complete accuracy, because it was limited with that particular type of art style in that time period. The other thing that I really feel like is going to be a big part of it is the drawing is not necessarily, it's showing a final product, but they have it lower. The thumb draw thing, I don't necessarily disagree with whether or not they use that. I can see a lot of reasons for using a thumb draw. It's used very frequently, it's used very well. So I don't have any like problem with that, let's say, but I think the problem I have is trying to say that they were running around with it down here, because in a lot of the stories and a lot of the epics as well, they would talk about, you know, loosing arrows from a ship or from behind a shield wall. And I can only imagine, if you're behind a shield wall, having it this way here, you know, having that stomach draw is not really going to be overly useful. So there may have been instances where that was used as like a snapshot, or if you're moving quickly, but I don't see it being really viable, where if you're lobbing arrows over, you're going to have to change that draw style. And so that was one thing that I think is another point that is important to note, because he's talking on it as like in a raid or fast moving, and I could see that, you know, working. But if anyone has any sort of light armor as well, it's not going to do much, because even, you know, at that partial draw, 40, 50 pounds, I don't see much going through mail or even like a thick padded gambeson, unless you like get a really good shot on there as well. And so, like, I drew people, yeah, the tapestries, yeah. Aragorn's new bow, Lord of the Rings probably already done, but I'm new. How would you categorize Aragorn's bow? It's a short bow. So Aragorn, in the books and everything, he was categorized as having a short bow. He was a hunter, and so it was just like probably about this height, probably not super heavy, or, you know, you can stack a heavy bow pretty light there as well. But I think where you're not going to get caught up in the foliage. So you have hunting bows and war bows, right? So war bows are heavy, used for war, as you would imagine, because they're really going to go super deep, super long, and everything like that. The other thing with Dequitum's video is The bow that we use, so if you guys didn't see that one, he was wearing his full plate armor and I was shooting at him with a very specific type of arrowhead, i.e. this one here. So these are the ones, some of the remainders that came back. I left with 5 arrows, then I came home with like 1. This one even here, you can see it's cracked in the back right there. So we did about 4 volleys of these, and so we took the best shots and put those in the video. But you know, later on he was like, hey, you know, I want to try, do you want to try again? You know, you kept saying like the helmet's the safest part, the helmet's the safest part, it's the thickest part. I'm like, I don't feel comfortable doing that. And then once we finished at the end, I was like, I don't want to tempt fate. We found, it wasn't until then that this one here was snapped in the back right there. So that was the big fear and the big risk. It wasn't this going through, it was if I hit it in a spot that was near the face, that it would fracture in the back here and it would crack and cause, you know, the splintering is going to be the biggest issue because the visor is going to protect against this. There's no way I'm going to get through his helmet with this. It's much more about this problem here, and this would be something that would be incredibly dangerous to have happen if it does splinter like that. So going into it, that was the biggest fear because you just don't know how wood's going to respond when it hits a solid object. And I've had them snap and break all the time, and if it's heavy wood and it's moving fast, those splinters, they don't have to be big to cause pretty extensive damage, you know. What got me into archery, so this will be the tangent part. So I kind of had a couple of things I wanted to say, and so if you're watching this back at a different part, you'll have to, you know, just parse it out, but I'll kind of read the questions there. Into archery was actually Lord of the Rings. I read that when I was in junior high. I got really sick with the flu one time, and I was sick for like a week and a half. And I read all the books, The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, and everything. And that was kind of what first sparked my interest into it. Was that just the characters, Legolas, and all that, and the medieval fantasy trope. You know, fantasy as a whole. So from there, I kind of ran with it, and English archers and how they would pull like 150, 160 pounds, and I was trying to quantify that in my head, like what would that feel like? How long would it take to get there? And reading about how it would like change the curvature of their spines because of the immense pressure and everything to the actual body as they developed. And so I was just like, I wonder if that's something that can be done, or if it's something that I could possibly do, you know? So that's what really kind of dove it in there for me, was just Lord of the Rings was first, and then from there I kind of went over into actual history and then just really dove into it there, and had a good time just challenging myself with the draw weight, because, you know, it's a lot more about, it's just that it's not necessarily just the accuracy per se. It's going to be the challenge of the draw weight, and that's what really kind of kept me going and trying to go up and everything. But like I was saying, we used the 130 pound, and the point where, you know, it just seemed like it was a little too dangerous with that much draw weight. So we decided that the 130 was going to be the best one to do. You know, he asked like, "What's your lightest one?" I was like, "It's 130." He's like, "Okay, well, we'll try that one." So I think if we went up an additional 30 pounds, you know, adding another 30 feet per second, most likely is kind of what I have it, you know, figured at. I feel like he would have felt those impacts more, but I definitely feel as if it would have been much less safe as a test in a whole. It's just adding an extra element of speed where a heavy projectile is moving fast, and it has a higher chance to splinter if it is moving faster. With these ones here, with this 130 pound bow, realistically, a 15 or 1600 grain arrow is a little bit heavy for it, so it's going to move a bit slower. But I also think that was just like that sweet spot where you have the impact, but you also have the safety where you're not getting to a point where it's going to cause actual, you know, life-threatening injuries is the hope naturally. And let's see here. Sorry, I'm going to take it. Was it difficult to travel with bows? Okay, so that's actually kind of a funny story. So traveling with bows, what I had to do was I got a large underground like black pipe, not PVC, but like the irrigation pipes. And so I cut it and I put on top of it, you can put like a screw on it because they need to open it through customs. So the bottom part I duct taped and I put the top part on, and I stuck them all in there, and it was categorized as a extra, you know, sized thing. So unfortunately, just to get, and you know, not just me complaining to you guys, just to get to Germany with an oversized luggage was an additional 300 bucks. and I had to pay it again to come back. So it was like an expensive trip. I lost, 4 arrows, and then it was like $600 going there and back just to transport the bows. But, I think I've gotten to a point in my life where it's like my wife and I have worked hard enough to where we have a little bit of discretionary spending, and that was well worth it to me as an investment, because A, I got to go to Germany, Gamescom, and travel with my wife, and then B, just you get to shoot a night with a bow, and I've never done that before, so that's a first. That's like a bucket list thing there. I don't think I'll have a chance to do that again realistically. So worth it, but it was a hassle because you had to pick it up from a separate part and carry it with you. And I mean, it's the longbow. This one's shorter, right? So this is only this side. The actual 160-pound bow is about this tall. And so the actual tubing was that large. And so I had to carry this giant tube. And it was a pain to get in the rental car as well, because it wasn't like a truck like I have. So it was a bit of a pain in the butt, but it was good. Yeah, my wife and I, we had a great time. She had fun. She was out there with us, and we were at the castle. And sorry, I'm just going to go on a tangent here as well, because I thought it was really funny. But we were at the castle, and I think that when Dequita and I did our live stream together, we were talking about it. It's still an active tourist site. And so that was like, I was very nervous about this because I don't do anything in public. Like, it's not really my jam overall. And so there were people coming and going, like tours. And there was times where like we would finish a fight and there was like a crowd of people there. But it actually made it a lot more fun because they were like, they want to take pictures with us. So we were taking pictures with all the people coming through. And then at night, because we finished at like 6:30 or something, at night they were actually having they hold the town like hall there. And so they actually came through, and there was one spot where you weren't allowed to go to without written permission, which was like at the very, very top. And my wife was like, I really want to get up to that spot. And we're like, well, we can try and ask some people, And so then she saw some people up there, and she's like, I'm going to go see what they're doing. So she went up there to the top. She met the mayor of the city. And, she's just like, anywhere she goes, she fits in perfectly. So she went up to the very top, and then that's when we were doing like the Trollo fight. So I was like in the berserker, cliche gear, and the Queen and I were out there fighting. And I look up the very top of the tower, and I see her up there waving at me with like the mayor of the town. So of course, she would meet the mayor and then get a personal tour throughout the tower. And so that was really funny as well, because it's just like, yeah, that checks out. That's just kind of how it rolls. D&D characters Willem Glim as multi-class. Oh, that's awesome. So, like Jesus in a movie. I don't know. I feel like I probably wouldn't do that. I would play like any medieval character that they have as like a scene filler or an extra. I would definitely be on board with that, just going out there and having some fun, dressing around in some armor and stuff like that. The next D&D video is in the works right now. I finished basically all of it and sent like the finished draft, let's call it, sorry, I use air quotes a lot, to a gentleman, it's a friend of mine on Discord. And if you guys aren't part of the Discord, Dash Rendar's Rangers, it's been an amazing community. That's where I met Justin, who made the minis for me. And that's where I met Mo as well, who's actually doing editing for me and adding like actual VFX and things like that. So he did the Trollo video and the Archer video. So he has a much better skill and ability to do that as well. And so it was, he's working on that now. So I have it finished, and he's doing his part as well to make it cooler, but I'm really excited about that. I have the minis as well, and I'm also going to be doing a Halloween special. And so Justin is actually making me a miniature of a Halloween character, and Fox on here as well. He's a dungeon master, and so he's going to be making a story, let's say, not a story, but he's giving me one of his characters that he created for like a house rules thing, which is like a pumpkin lord. So that's going to be the next session, is going to be like a Halloween themed session. But I'm having so much fun with it. I actually am creating like an overall narrative. Before it was just like they run from place to place and everything. And now it's going to be, a much more of like a story quest, and I'll probably have seasons. And at the end of this one, the boys actually, they get to level up because they've been stuck at level 5 for quite some time. So I'm like, I think they deserved it. So I leveled up all the characters as well. And so now we're going to start doing that and adding a few more things. And I think that the people who watch it now, I think I've kind of refined it down to a more niche group, you know, which is less viewers, but that's totally cool. Because someone was talking the other day, and this is me just going on a tangent here, so bear with me, but like someone was saying there's an excess of content, but no emphasis on community. And that's been like the coolest thing here is I feel like I've been able to and fortunate enough to really have a community of people. So it's like when I share it, it's like building that community with the people who really enjoy it. And the thing that I definitely do notice as well is anytime a video does slightly better than normal and it goes out into like the wider YouTube space, like I feel the comments and the people there are really not as happy to to watch it or don't have the same sense of humor, especially shorts. Shorts are horrible. Oh, they're the worst part of YouTube. But I think that that's the coolest thing is with the people here, and especially on Discord, it's been able to really build up a community of people, and then there's content on top of that that I get to share with them. So that's been like the best part because this is, like I've said many times, this is not like the job that I have, right? This is simply a passion project. I have an hour before I got it like a showing, right? If you didn't know, I do real estate. So I'm like, hey, I dropped off the kids at school. I got like an hour. Let's head out to the field, live stream, talk about a couple things and just hang out with you guys before, you know, the workday starts and everything like that. So I'm excited about the next D&D one, but I have a few things going. I'm probably gonna space those out like once a month because they are an intensive film. Like to do the last one, I think it was 3 separate days and I have like 2.5 hours to film those. So it's like, you know, just going on those time frames, it takes a lot of different writing on the front end, and then assembling it, and then the back end is just like putting everything together. So those are like a big passion project. So I'm not gonna make monies or, you know, make money or get like tons of views on those, but as long as I can have fun and share it with people, that's been the most important thing. So back to it, if you guys were missing it in the beginning, the big part I wanted to talk about for this one was going to be the Armored Freedom test and then talk about the Scandinavian archery. So if you were here for that, I apologize that I'm going back to it because I had quite a few people ask about that recent Lars Anderson video and the type of archery where it's like a stomach draw, right? I saw other YouTubers make videos of it. And for me, like if I'm gonna make a video, I want it to be something fun and lighthearted and not like a debunking other YouTubers video, I guess. I want it to be like, I want it to exist in its own little ecosystem. So I don't necessarily want to make a video on that because I feel like even if I disagreed with him, it would be like calling someone out. And that's not what I want the channel to be. I feel those are the ones that get a lot of views, but I don't think that they're the ones that I'm happy to make. So I want to do a live about it because this is just like a small group of people who are probably most interested in it without trying to put someone as the young, I was going to say on blast, and I was going to say as the young kids say, but I don't think young kids say that anymore. I'm super old now. So the big part of that, if you missed it, is his whole context and what he's trying to do is he's using tapestries to try and recreate what Scandinavian archery looked like. And there's parts of it that I agree with and parts that I don't necessarily agree with. The parts that I agree with, first of all, is going to be the thumb draw. That's something that's been around for a long time, and there's all different forms of archery. And so that's something that I don't necessarily think would be inaccurate, and that is something you can also draw relatively well on a tapestry. The other part I don't necessarily agree with is that really odd stomach draw he's referring to. Now he talks about being able to do that with lighter draw weight, being more mobile and agile, but in reality, like, he is very talented and he can make anything look mobile or agile. That's like, you know, like a really strong weightlifter saying, well, you can bench 300 pounds if you have like a close grip, right? And it's like, well, you can, but that doesn't mean I can. And so I feel like it's not necessarily like a catch-all just because someone can replicate something and make it look a certain way. Or like David Blum, I think, the archer who does like the ones on like the pole and stuff. He can do that, and he can do that probably from a thumb draw and the Mediterranean draw, but that doesn't mean I have the capacity to necessarily do that. So the big thing that I find is going to be a problem is the idea that you're going to be able to use a bow of any sort of substantial weight at this type of movement here. And so this, like I said earlier, this is 130, and so if I'm doing that, even if I just try to do like an Olympic draw, like I can get it about there, right? Nothing right home about. That's like a very partial draw. But if you're in here and I have it and I'm trying to loose from this position here, it's like, I can get it to about there, but all of my effort is going into the actual drawing of the bow. So there's not necessarily going to be any sort of real good thing I can glean from that. And so when you have that, you also have to look at the art behind it. And so the tapestries of it, and so I'm repeating myself a little bit in case people come in late because it's all over the place. I never know, you know, is it's going to be two-dimensional type art. And so it's not going to be necessarily accurate or indicative of how things were done. So give me 1 second here. So one thing that I spoke with Dequitum about, because he was curious about it as well, just with my particular take, was he is an art history instructor or professor. So he's done that for a long time. He has a good extensive knowledge, and he is a painter. So it's specifically that type of thing. So in those paintings, they would always have a sword facing this way, right? Because if you're doing a two-dimensional type painting, it's going to have to show what it is. If you have it this way, it's going to look like a straight line. So you're not going to be able to see what's in their hand. It's not going to look very good. So what they would have to do would have to be draw in a way. So he was telling me you can't necessarily trust those for historical reference points because they're drawing a very specific way in order to convey a point. Like, okay, this guy has a sword. It's not necessarily completely accurate to what the movement would be, but you have to convey that it's there. So if someone's doing any sort of movement, it's always going to be this way. So even if they're like attacking in a specific way that's odd, it's going to be there. And so they don't have ones where it's up high like this. It's going to be this way, right? Because then the actual person viewing it can see that they're holding a sword as opposed to here. So when it talks about that type of archery, or when they use those type of things to say this is obviously historical, this is the way that it was done, I feel that there's drawings from around the same time that show it at a chest draw. And so it shows it there, and so they may bring it down here, right? And so you're in here, and so it could be that way. And the other thing that I did notice when I was with Dequitum was I did a couple videos where I had a couple shots. I loosed some arrows when I had a helmet on, and so I had a kettle helm that had a visor. So if you have any sort of helmet, you know, it's going to stick it out a little bit, so you can't necessarily bring it to here, right? You can't do that. So what you have to do is when you have it up, you have to really bring it out and have it down low in this way here, so you're down this way. So if someone's illustrating that, it could very well look a little lower. But the other big problem that I have with that is you are locked in a strong position if your arm is here. The moment your arm goes here, you have no structure. So using that as a way to draw a, like you're pushing out, but you can't imagine trying to, sorry, let me get my thoughts together. Imagine trying to push something this way or push something this way. When you're locked out in here, you have really strong strength, stability, and core, and it makes it easy to aim and move. But if I'm here, I'm actually have to pull away from my body to keep it strong and try to not have it compress in, but I have very little strength in that way. So it's going to be much more about that strong base there, because here you have the core engaged and you're not going to push into yourself in the same way as opposed to having it down low here. Now again, that goes for heavy bows or heavy-ish type bows. If I had like a 30-pound bow or 40-pound bow, I could do it. And you can do a lot of things with light bows. You can shoot with your feet, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that it was a viable tactic or an option. And the other thing that I was referencing as well was it talks a lot about ship-to-ship shooting, where you're loosing an arrow across a ship to another ship or being behind a shield wall. Now you can imagine, and just because I have them here, some props. You can imagine if you're behind a shield wall, if the shield wall is here or anywhere there, if someone is back loosing an arrow, the last thing that I would want is someone doing it from a belly draw because that's like, you really have to, like, I can't imagine how to even look as like holding it and trying to lob it. Like, you'd have to completely twist your body back, right? So to me, it kind of completely negates the idea of pitched warfare. That would not work in pitched warfare, I think, in any capacity. Because if you're trying to get over a line or if you're shooting ship to ship, it's not going to work. So if you're in here this way, someone's behind you, I would definitely want them to have an ability to loose an arrow up and arc it substantially more than I would if it was just coming down low, right? It just doesn't make sense to me. I think that would be very dangerous, and also you wouldn't get the same amount of distance with it as well. So maybe there was variable things for variable engagements. If you're running and gunning, it's possible you could use that technique just to quickly loose an arrow. But in reality, again, like I think the other thing, and I don't know, maybe I'll do a video, I'm not sure, I'm still torn. But it's like I have some chain mail, right, riveted mail. I imagine with a partial draw that's light, it's not gonna go through, as opposed to full draw, you know, when you're going through. I think you're gonna definitely be able to go through an armored opponent substantially easier. Let me see if there's any comments real quick. Did see video top only 40 pounds versus night was crazy. Yes, yeah. So, oh, that's cool. Okay, this is awkward if you're watching this and you're not here in the moment. Loyal nerd, yes. And so I will simply say that loyal nerd army, you guys are the best, honestly. If you do follow the Discord, Rendar's Rangers, I'm gonna plug it again because, you know, videos are hard to make with relative frequency, and so that's been a great way to engage and speak with people in a more personal level as opposed to just talking to them in the comments on YouTube. So if you want to chat a little bit more in between the lulls when I'm trying to make a video or put one together, that's a great way to do that as well. Is it tricky to gauge technique without inact treatises which have something more than archery, such as I would say yes. I feel like, oh yeah, so it's, sorry. If we get to 1,000 followers on Discord, we're gonna invade Iceland. You heard it here first, guys, 1,000. We're making moves. So I'd say definitely it's hard to say for sure with the way things were done without intact treatises. And I think it's especially difficult for the martial arts as in the fighting and the techniques that knights used and everything. There's a lot of good documentation about that, and there's a lot of people who study it well, but I think that's much harder because that's like trying to, you know, figure out what works in, let's say, like my background's jiu-jitsu and wrestling, American folk wrestling and things like that. It's much easier if you can try it with a large grouping of people, and I think that's one thing that got sorted out is the more people participate in an event, the easier it is to really get a sense of what would work for a human, because despite the fact that people trained at such a young age, you know, people are still people, and we have better fitness, nutrition, and health now, and so you can kind of find what works. I think archery is easier in that way because you can replicate what's done, and there's still people who practice it in a very traditional way, but it's not a large spattering, and especially with like the buhurt and things like that, there's a lot of techniques that are not allowed that would be extremely invaluable in armored combat. When I was with Dequitum, the one thing he kept doing, just because it was a bent edge, but he did a lot of thrusting, right? Thrusting in the gaps. Now, that's not enough of impact for someone like me who isn't like engaged in the sport to register as that a hit, or there needs to be an officiator to say that's a kill, or sorry, I don't know if YouTube gets mad if I say that's a hit, right? But when you have something like Buhurt, where you have a really heavy duty axe and you just pummel someone with it, they're gonna feel it substantially just because of the blunt force and that impact. And so I think it's hard to fully practice something in a safe environment and really have an understanding of what's going on unless you have instructors there to call those hits, because you can't practice certain things without actually putting yourself or someone else in harm's way. My camera just slid down a little bit, so sorry if that changes the second. No audio. Whoa. All right, hold on. Can anyone hear me now? Is we back? All right, okay. Yes, I don't know if anyone else is getting an inordinate amount of spam calls lately. I should have put on like airplane mode or something, but man, my phone has been blowing up. I didn't like usually be like apply for a credit or a loan or something. That's when it comes, but lately it's been pretty inordinate, the volume of it. And then one other thing I'm excited that we're going to incorporate, and you'll see it when you see the new D&D video, is DeQuitum actually, he sent me a message after I left, and I was like, hey, I had a dream the other night, and Trollo was wearing the that garb, the berserker garb. I was like, and he was like, would you be interested in having that? And I was like, oh, I certainly would be interested in having that. So that actually just arrived. I had finished filming when I had it, but that's going to be something that is going to be incorporated now. He's diving deeper into the berserker fur cliche. And then I'm also getting from another person. He is just starting out his company. They make historical replica weapons, and he's actually sending me a large two-handed Dane axe. So it's like probably, I think you sent me a picture. It's about to here, I think, and it's a large M type. So if you look at, the Peterson scale when it goes through the different, like they have the H pummel and things, that's how they categorize it. So the M1's a much larger type of axe with a larger cutting edge. So that's going to be amazing. And the one thing I really want to do, and if you guys want to help me out on Discord too, is I'm kind of thought processing. One thing I want to test was like in 1066, there was the battle, I think, and they had the house carls, I think they were called, the house carls, and they were large Norse with large two-handed axes, and it talks about how they were able to cleave off a horse's head. And so I want to test that, and I want to try and create a good what would I call it? A good analogy for that to see what can be done. So a good way to figure out the density, like the bone's pretty easy, right? You can use something that would have a pretty close analogy, but as far as setting up in a place where if you strike it, what would be the right amount of muscle mass, of tissue, and everything like that, that's the one thing that I would really want to try and build well to test that out. There's no, don't worry, yeah, I'm not gonna get an actual horse. That'd be, I think I might get in trouble from people on that one. So that's the one thing that's coming up. So I'm trying to figure that out until the axe comes. I'm trying to figure out how I'm gonna build that, And so it's going to be interesting to see how that will play out and how I can build that out to make it so it seems like a pretty good enactment of that, and whether or not someone like me has the feasibility to actually chop through an animal in that way. So that'll be interesting to do. So images prepare humans. Yes, so those are the things I got going on. I just wanted to do a live. I like to try to do these every now and then when it's in between like a lull, I guess, and I'm finishing up and we're all coming up on like a week and a half of no new videos. And so I'm probably hoping to do the D&D one on Wednesday. But I just want to go ahead, and I like to do these just to chat with people and, maybe stay in the algorithm. I don't know how it works, but just, have a little conversation on something I wouldn't make a video about fully. And so, like I said, I don't want to do the full Lars Anderson video, nor the breakdown of just like the arrows versus armor thing, but I thought live is like a really good way to kind of do that as well. So to Axe to Pumpkin Lord, yes, hopefully that should be there before the pumpkin episode. So I think that the large Dane axe against pumpkins will be something that will be truly fun to behold as well. And so that's going to be very exciting to do when I get a chance to do that. Oh my gosh, it's so humid. This is miserable. So that's kind of it. Let's see, what time is it? 9:19. Okay, maybe I got like 10 more minutes before I got to get out of here. Before I go, any more questions about any particular thing? Because I kind of had a few things I wanted to chat about, but is there anything in particular about whether that be the Disquetum stuff, D&D, history, all that good stuff, Will I ever try making a bow myself? I would be rather reticent to do it. I'm happy enough to make my arrows, but making a bow, it kind of frightens me, and I don't want to try that. Have a cleric or a wizard on your team? I'd probably have a cleric, just because Sir Gaines is not really one to heal, as he's made clear. So I think that that would be a good mix in there, but maybe actually a wizard. Yeah, no, I change it. We need a magic user. I just don't have the VFX capabilities to make that enjoyable, nor can I make it like a good test, because the whole allure for me is going to be testing out what actually happens and doing like a modified weapons test, but also making a fun story in it as well. And that's kind of neat. That's what makes it so fun, because there's a lot of like arrows versus armor, or you know, axe versus bone. But if I can package it in a fun video to make, I can kind of have the same result where you actually see what happens if you hit something, you know, with an axe and what kind of damage it will do, but also wrap it in a story where I can kind of kill two birds with one stone in a way and make it much more enjoyable for everyone to watch, I think, and certainly more enjoyable for me to make, because I feel like just going out and smashing things together is kind of how I started on this channel, but I do think there's a lot more fun to be had if you really just kind of embrace the nerd, let's say, you know. Again, it's not the wide appeal, it's like the community appeal. That's fun to me. And so that's what makes it enjoyable to share as well. But I was going to ask too, I did bring out Sling, so I didn't know if you guys wanted, before I go, if you wanted to have, if you had any Sling questions, because I could do that as well if the camera holds up and everything, as opposed to just the archery and everything like that. So, oh, it looks like I'm losing it. Well, who knows? I'm about in an hour. I think that's usually when things start to crap out. But I did bring that out here too, so I could do a quasi Sling, you know, training video if you guys want to do that, because that would also be something that is just a little bit different. Add some time. Healing Magic Mimic, Google. Oh, okay. Let me see, hold on. All right, so I'm gonna step out of camera for just 1 second, and then I'm going to grab a Sling. Oh, okay, hold on. Be right back. Okay. It's probably bad form to walk away from a live stream, everything as well. But we're back here. So when it comes to it, I've slinging things other than rocks, I have done a few other things. So there's actually accounts, I think in the Spanish Civil War in the 1800s, where they actually went ahead and they had slings throwing grenades, right? So I did that like in a video a long time ago, where what I used were soda cans, and I wrapped them in duct tape so they would stick. They're a little more tacky. And I put them in there to see how I could sling them and what would happen. And it was really fun, because when they hit a target, like they would explode and everything. So that's one other thing I've done. One thing I've wanted to try is like billiard balls. I think that would be a lot of fun as well. Have you made a video with whistling lead shot for a sling? Yes, I have actually. I think I called it. Um, whistling arrows versus whistling lead or something like that. So that was a while ago I made that one, and so I did actually whistling arrows where I drilled into the tips of the bodkins to see what that sounded like, and then I did the lead shot as well, where I drilled that in. They'd most likely have forged it that way, but the audio on that one didn't come across as great, and then I figured out how to fix that as well. And so I wanted to try, I put that in like a short. So I talked about that also on the Unsubscribed podcast when I came to it, and I actually inputted like the better audio for it, and it makes this really great like hiss noise, and I can definitely see how it would make people drop down. If it was coming at you, it would be pretty horrifying. It would definitely keep you in place. But just because we're out here, if you guys don't know, let's just talk about some slings for a little bit before I gotta go. So when you have a sling, this is a split pouch Balearic sling. So there's a couple kinds. You have a hammock and a split. Split pouches look like this. So it's not a full hammock as you see with a lot of the ones that are common if you use paracord or things like that. So the rocks you're gonna need, this is an obvious idea, but they're gonna be much more oval shaped. So you can use that with clay, and you can use that with rocks that are made in a specific way. Or if you find rocks that are shaped a specific way. When you have this in here like this, you can be either your middle finger or it can be your index finger if you so prefer, You just have to switch where you have the grip end. I tend to prefer the middle finger. It just feels a little better for me as well. And so this is gonna go right in there like this. So you have this, and you're gonna have the actual string or the sling in this way here. So you wanna make sure when you hold it, you're basically at the center point, because slings, you know, obviously if you have the spot in the wrong, if you have that in the wrong place, it wouldn't sit comfortably in the hammock of the sling. And so when you start out with a sling, what I always tell people to do is don't start over the head, or don't start with like a fast full release. You want to just start by figuring out when to open up your fingers to have it go in front of you. So you always kind of start just with it by your side in this way here. And then when you're ready to release, you just open your thumb and your finger and you have it go forward just like that. And that's how you figure out exactly when you're gonna basically let go of it. And once you get that sorted, then you can start to get a little more creative with it, add a little more speed, or go over top of the head. And so if you're going over top of the head, the way that it's gonna work is you can bring it up to rest over top the head as well, or you can just do a quick single release as well. And so if I'm going for accuracy and not trying to maximize as much power as possible, I tend to just do a quick shot or a quick snap. So a quick snap is just inside, and you're just gonna look where you wanna go. And really, it's just all about feel. And you just snap it over just like that. But if you're trying to add more power, you can come over top, because you really have the ability to come in and move it more. And if you do this, you still can do the same thing, but it's a lot harder to learn that as a technique to have the same amount of power if you're doing just like a quick shot. Because you can do that, and there's other ways to do it as well. I've seen people who have done it for a long time, because to get the momentum right away, you can bring it back further and then over top, so you have that snap. I've even seen some people where they kind of come backwards and then you come over top and you go that way. But slings, to me, it's really about preference. What works best for you in particular, what the best type of, you know, movement is for you, and what you can do consistently over time as well. And the only other thing I recommend, if you try to pick this up, if you have a sling like this, which is jute twine, and you're doing it a lot, get athletic tape and put it over your finger, because you'll blister. Because after you start throwing for quite some time, you really do get a lot of blisters on your finger there. So that's like an extra way to kind of help protect your finger, I guess you would say. And so that is quick sling talk, but we are now at 9:30. So I got to get going. I have something to do at 10 o'clock. But thanks for hanging out, guys. New video should be coming out soon. Thanks again, as always. If you want to join and chat in the interim, again, it's Rendar's Rangers. And I look forward to the next video, and then going on to the Halloween special, getting the Dane axe and just smashing some stuff and sharing it with all of you. So have an amazing rest of your week. Have a good Monday, and I will chat with you guys very soon.